Hello, folks. Welcome to the Mystic Life Podcast. I'm Reverend Rick, aka Beast Mode Pops. Okay, in this podcast, well, I'm going to discuss everything from some big Mandela effects that are huge to me and what were basically the smoking gun as far as I'm concerned. And, well, let me pull my notes up here real quick. I'm also going to talk about what I believe is going on with, well, at least two, well, I think there might be two different aspects. I don't know if they're connected, but two different aspects as far as what's causing the changes, like the changes to the sun, changes to the Bible, the changes to logos, that kind of thing. So, without further ado. Alright, in case you don't understand, and maybe you've just stumbled across this, you don't know what the Mandela effect is, let me explain it to you. The Mandela effect, some people think the Mandela effect has something to do with when Mandela died in 2013. That's really not it. That's when the phrase was coined. But the Mandela effect itself refers to, and the reason it's called the Mandela effect, it refers to Nelson Mandela dying back in 1991, but then he was alive again. So the man in history died in history, but also didn't die in history. Some people think it's because we've moved to an alternate reality. There's an alternate timeline, things like that. Basically, it's just a big mystery. But the reason it's called Mandela effect is because of Nelson Mandela dying in 1991, not 2013, and then being alive again. And then he did die again in 2013, but the Mandela effect itself is referring to the 1991 situation of him dying and being resurrected or whatever. But he's not the only one. I mean, there are others. Like, a big one for me is Jim Neighbors. Gomer Pyle. If any of you ever watched that old show, Gomer Pyle? Jim Neighbors, from my perspective, and everything I'm going to talk about is going to be from my perspective. I'm not trying to say, if you don't remember this, you're wrong. I'm just saying that this is from my perspective, what I remember happening. And most of what I'm going to bring up is stuff that it's not little things. It's not little things like the Wendy's logo, the girl doesn't have braids. It's not going to be little things like that. These are what I consider big things. These are like smoking guns for me. Like Jim Neighbors being dead and now he's not. Or actually, I think he might have just died again this year or last year. But, like Nelson Mandela, I remember him dying long ago. So that's always going to be from my perspective. So don't be taking offense and leaving bad comments, saying, you don't know what you're talking about or whatever. This is all from my perspective. If you remember something different, it's different for you. Whatever's causing this situation with a lot of us, as far as Mandela affected people. And I don't think it should be called that anymore. I prefer to call it like quantum causality, because it has something to do with quantum physics. But don't take offense if I say, no, Jim Neighbors is dead, and he wasn't dead, because to you in this reality, this timeline, whatever the situation is, he didn't die, but in mine, he did. So one big quantum effect from my perspective that nobody seems to talk about is chemtrails. Chemtrails did not exist. They were never talked about. I never heard about them. I had never seen any, prior to just a couple of years ago. That's when I saw the first one. Granted, it was when a guy I worked with pointed it out to me. But it's not like it's the only time I ever looked up at the sky. I'm in my 50s. I've looked up at the sky many times, and I used to live by Logan Airport. You know, when you live by an airport, you see planes all the time. You know what they look like. You know what they look like flying overhead. You know what they sound like, and so on. So it's not like I wouldn't never have looked up at the sky and saw a jet leaving this big plume behind it and said, well, what the heck is that? You know, I've never seen it. So from my perspective, it's a Mandela effect. Now, I suppose it's possible that, you know, I'm assuming that I would have noticed it and I just didn't. I guess that's possible, but I don't think so. I think the chemtrails themselves are a fact in this reality, not in my old reality or whatever, the old whatever it was. Okay. Now, I want to talk about what, you know, when I say Nelson Mandela shouldn't be called that's not what we should call. We should call it the Mandela effect. Nelson Mandela brought it to the attention of a great number of people when this woman coined the term back in 2013. But I think this stuff's been going on for a long time. And I know it's been going on for a long time for me. I just didn't realize it. You know, now this Mandela effect business brought this to my attention, and I started thinking about some of the really weird stuff that happened to me when I was younger, long before Mandela. And the big one, the biggest one, the smoking gun, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, the smoking gun, was Pluto, the planet Pluto. When I was in elementary school, about 4th, 5th grade, we were studying the solar system. Now, let me give you a little backstory here. I moved a lot. My family moved a lot. So I went to, when I filled out my security clearance packet, I was in military intelligence for 6 years. When I filled out my security clearance packet, I had to list every school I went to. I had to use 2 pieces of paper because I had gone to over 23 schools when I was a kid. So when I went from one school to the other, depending on how far apart they were, like if we moved from one city to a neighboring city, they were pretty much close. But when I moved from one state to another, and I lived in over 13 states when I was a kid, the curriculums could be way off. You know, I could be a couple of months advanced or a couple of months behind wherever I'm moving to. So it was always up in the air. But in this one school, we were learning about the solar system. And when we were listing the 8 planets, or learning about the 8 planets, my teacher said, now scientists have just recently discovered a 9th planet, and they're calling it Pluto. Now, this is a roller coaster ride. I know what y'all are saying. Even you Mandela affected people are going, oh, come on, Pluto's always been there. Well, I specifically remember this because it freaked me out. My science teacher said that. And then shortly after that, might have been the end of the school year, my mother did try to move us, you know, over the summertime. But in any case, I ended up at another school right after that. And when we were at the other school, we studied the solar system again. Now, usually, like I said, sometimes I'm behind. Actually, it turned out a lot of the times I was behind. I was kind of happy that I was able to talk about the planets and the 9th planet that most of these other kids, there's no way they're going to know about this. It was just discovered. So when the teacher said, can anyone name the planets in our solar system? I said, yeah, I can. You know, and I named all the planets, and then I said, the 9th planet is Pluto. And my teacher was like, no, there's no such planet as Pluto. And I thought he was out of his mind. You know, and I said, well, the school I was just at, they said this is a recent discovery. Scientists have just discovered this 9th planet, and they're calling it Pluto. And he said, no. He said, trust me. He said, there is no 9th planet called Pluto. He said they saw there's a large asteroid out beyond Uranus, and they had considered whether that might be a planet or not, but they decided it was too small. It was just an asteroid. So it did not become named, and it's not the 9th planet. And then life went on. A couple of years later, I was in junior high school. And I ended up taking a science test, and one of the things was we had to list all of the planets in the solar system. So I list all 8 planets. Well, I failed the test. The teacher said, I went to ask the teacher afterwards why. He said, because I double checked. I'm like, no, they're all there. They're in the right order. So I went to the teacher and asked him why he marked it wrong. He said, well, you left out Pluto. And I said, what? He said, yeah, you left out the ninth planet. There's 9 planets. The ninth one is Pluto. And I said, well, wait a minute. The school I was just at, they said there is no planet Pluto. And he said, well, I don't know what your teacher was talking about. You know, Pluto has been there forever. It was discovered back in the 1930s, I think. And it's always been one, well, not always, obviously, before 1930, but since 1930, it's been the ninth planet. So, here I am again, and now I'm wondering what the heck is going on. You know, I thought about this for weeks, and it was confusing, and finally I came to the conclusion teachers are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. They're no better than we are, us kids, as far as what they know and what they don't know, and how they get things wrong. And I just dropped it and moved on. But in hindsight, it had to be a Mandela effect, because now that in itself, you could argue it's not a Mandela. You could argue it is exactly what I said, that teachers are idiots. However, one of the other things that happened when I was in school was we talked about scientific advancements and that kind of stuff. And I had said something about, yeah, I can't wait until we have computers like they do in Star Trek and that kind of thing. And my teacher said, no, that's never going to happen because computers are science fiction. And I said, what do you mean they're science fiction? I know. I've read a science magazine where I'm thinking, oh my God, there's Pluto again. You know, they're in science magazines, you know, that the government has computers doing this and that. He said, well, yeah, but computers fill up rooms that are bigger than this classroom. He said, there's never going to be a computer that you can have. They're always just massive pieces of equipment. So as far as, you know, regular people having computers, that's purely science fiction. And then, I don't know, a couple of months later, within that year, a magazine came out that said that there were people getting, or companies offering small computers that could fit on a desktop. Not like we have now. These were more, you know, computers that had switches on them and lights. You know, I forget what the first one was, but they were small now, and people were buying them to make them usable in everyday life and stuff like that. And then business started getting them. Business started getting workstations and stuff like that. I mean, after that, but that was the genesis of that. So then shortly after that, all of a sudden, PCs were out. Okay, now, I always wanted one, so I would like read the magazine and look and see how much they were and stuff. I mean, I remember these early computers, they cost thousands of dollars. We're talking, you know, for a computer that wouldn't match, you know, the computing power of some of our calculators. If anyone actually has a calculator anymore, we all use our phones, I think, nowadays. You know, it's like $5,000-$10,000 for one of these things that, you know, is like nothing. But anyway, then in 1988, I ended up in military intelligence. I ended up working in a big mainframe system. And so basically I've been in information technology in one way or another since 1988. I've ran an internet company, a national internet company. I've had my own internet company. I've had my own company building custom computer systems and consulting and things like that. So I'm very up, or at least up until about five or so years ago, I was very up on technology. I kept with you know, current changes and stuff like that. So I was, you know, I knew what I was talking about. I was actually very considerate. I was actually interviewed by a information technology magazine called Information Week magazine back in 2000. And so I pretty much knew what I was doing. Well, when this Mandela effect a couple of weeks ago came out and I realized and started looking into it, I thought back to, well, what about that computer business? You know, I wanted to see what the timeline for computer technology was, to see what happened. And computer technology in this reality things progressed faster than my reality. Because in my reality, the Apple II came out in 1983. And in this reality, it came out in 1980. And the first Apple was in 75, I think it was. Well, in my reality, that was like 78. Like the CD-ROM didn't come out until about 92 or 93 in my reality, but in this reality, it was out in 83, like 10 years ahead of time. There weren't even, in my reality, any computers for anyone to use them with. So how would they even come out? What would be the purpose? You know, so a lot of IT has changed. Some of it's only, 3 to 5 years ahead, and some of it's 10 years ahead of my reality or time or whatever. So, these are big Mandela effects. Another one is quantum computers themselves. I remember like about 10 years ago, quantum computers were just a theoretical idea that someday we might be able to make these things. It was kind of like the idea of Terminator. If you've seen the movie Terminator, the whole thing of Skynet and all that stuff, that was all like science fiction and theory and all that stuff. Well, that's what quantum computers were 10 years ago. In my time, my reality, whatever, now here they are. Not only are they around, but they are in use. That's craziness. Especially since quantum physics itself was only a theory somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago, and then it slowly became accepted as reality. But I'm talking very recently, since 2000, quantum physics was still a theory. So now all of a sudden it's this big reality, and we have quantum computers, and this is a huge change. I mean, this is a change that should have occurred over 30 or 40, 30 to 50 years. It happened all in like 10 years. So it's got to be a Mandela effect. I mean, I'll have to look and see what the history of the quantum computer is, but I'm telling you, it was in my history, even beyond in the early 2000s, it was still a theory. There was no way. Some people said it would never happen. So that's it as far as Mandela effects. Oh, well, there is one other one, and that goes along with the things that happened to me when I was a kid. And one of them was, I specifically remember an entire day that disappeared. And I remember it was a Wednesday. And nothing remarkable happened. It was just a regular day. Me and my buddy got together. We ran around. We did this. We did that. Then I went to bed. I could remember what I ate the previous day, ate on that day. And then the next day, me and my buddy were supposed to do something specific. Don't remember what it was. But I went over his house, and he wasn't ready. And I was like, why aren't you ready, And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, we're supposed to go do this. And he said, that's tomorrow. I said, no, today's Thursday. He said, no, today's Wednesday. So I had 2 Wednesdays. So I was like, I thought, well, maybe I dreamt an entire day. There's no way. You know how dreams are. You're walking into Walmart, you open the door, and you're in your bedroom. They're very disjointed and all that. This dream, I could remember everything. It was not anything like a dream. So, but I tried. I said, well, maybe it was just a crazy dream. It's a dream I've never had before. I dreamt the whole day. So I blew it off. Then a couple of years later, the same thing happened again. I had an entire day that just disappeared. I lived an entire day and can remember what everyone did and where we went and everything. And then the next day, it was the same day. We didn't do the same stuff, but I don't remember what day that was, like Thursday, Friday, Monday, whatever, but I can remember the whole day. And then it was the same day again after I woke up. So that happened twice. It's the only 2 times it's happened in my life. Never happened before, never happened since, other than it was 2 days that were a couple of years apart. So that's the end of the Mandela effect. So I'm not going to cover any Mandela effects from now on unless they're really big Mandela effects, like smoking gun kind of Mandela effects. I'm not going to care if, the Sears Roebuck logo changed. I'm not going to cover stuff like that from now on. I'm more interested right now in talking to you people, having some people come on the show and talk about their experiences with this phenomenon. Big things like you have a sister you didn't have before, or your brother's gone, or something like that. The big things. Like one guy, the color of his car changed overnight. That's pretty big. It's something that's really remarkable. And I'm going to try and get some people on here to talk about things like that. So if you've had that kind of experience, hold on a second, I'll put my, if you've had that kind of experience, here's my contact information. There's the website where the podcast is going to be hosted, the audio only. And then there's the email address where you can contact me if you want to discuss a situation, something that's happened to you. Well, shoot, hold on while I get my browser open here. And we will move on to talking about theory. What my theories are as far as what's going on with this Mandela effect phenomenon. Okay. Now, we all know that one of the big things everyone keeps talking about is, no, I don't want that. Is the effect of logos like Home Depot. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to cut that here, and I'm going to make this a two-parter. So, if you want to get a hold of me, here's my contact information. And I'll have the next part of this up soon, probably. Well, I'll probably set it to automatically go public in the next couple of days. I want to get this one done and up because my internet connection is so terrible. It's going to take forever just to load this one up. So I want to get something up there because this is the fourth time I've tried to get this. I've done the entire video, went back and reviewed it, and something was wrong and I've had to do it again. So I'm going to do this in smaller parts. So until the next one, y'all take care. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, please. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Until the next time, see ya.
King.